What's up, duelists? We've got the post Edison Legends tier list, much sought after, much anticipated. I'm here today with James. What's up, James?
Hello.
James, is there anything you want to say before we hop into this tier list about Edison Legends, about the metagame, about any of this shit?
Um, Edison Legends, a great tournament that you will see coverage all week about. But yeah, it definitely I don't know, I can't say it changed my opinions too much, but it did adjust some things very slightly. And yeah, we just thought it would be a good time to reflect on the way the metagame has changed, even if it's only small amounts. And just get what's that thing you always say? You always say we say no cap.
No
So
cap.
we
Yes, zero
kind of just
zero
want to get
cap.
the cap out of the tier list.
Yeah, we're this is all business. No
All business.
casual. Business formal tier list. All right, you guys whined and complained that we had fucking Mega Rock Dragon in the last one, and 900 million of you guys DM'd us for Mega Rock Dragon list or Mega Rock Dragon video win. But you know what? We're gonna dispel some of those rumors today in this.
And I got one thing to say to those people before we even get into this. You want Mega Rock Dragon deck? Go make Mega Rock Dragon deck. No one's stopping you from making Mega Rock Dragon deck. We don't have a better Mega Rock Dragon deck list than you do.
That's
If you're the Mega Rock
absolutely
Dragon
true.
fan, you almost definitely have the best Mega Rock Dragon list. Go play Mega Rock Dragon. Have fun with it. Don't worry about what we care about Mega Rock Dragon. Beat us with Mega Rock Dragon. Don't beat me, but beat Keegan.
Beat James only. James, he's just beat his ass. All right. Sometimes you need to get your ass beat, and James needs to lose to a 9,000 Mega Rock Dragon. All right. Let's jump into the tier
Yeah,
list.
just
You know
the
what?
point is
Let's
just go do it.
let's
Don't
just
worry
jump into
about
the tier
us.
list. Yeah.
If
Don't.
we didn't rank your favorite deck, don't fucking worry about it.
Yeah. Don't worry about it. Just keep playing it and keep kicking ass and do your thing. Edison format is the format for that. I think mostly this tier list is going to revolve around matchup spread, like how well a deck does against the field and how well it does in like tournament sets and stuff like that. But honestly, there are so many decks that could win a tournament or do have a crazy run in Edison. So don't you know the vibes. You know the vibes. James,
Yeah.
very based. I'm a, you know what? It's dude. We don't even need
It
to
is a
discuss.
good deck. It really underperformed, but also was not very represented at the tournament. But as much as it gets memed about, I do believe it's a strong deck. Christie is a strong card. Like DD Warrior Lady is weirdly a strong card. It's got good matchups. It's very consistent, which is another thing that I think is going to be integral to all these good decks. Because there might be some powerful decks that don't do their thing that often or that consistently, but they're going to be ranked lower. So very good deck.
Honestly, up here it says based, but if I was making this tier list, it'd be biased. This shit. This is my favorite deck. Varies. I won a tournament with it recently. I'm probably gonna play it again in the next tournament that I get to play in, and I just think it's fucking insane. It's ridiculous. People underrate this deck all the time because they see Shining Angel and they think for some reason that's a bad card, but no, it's a stupid deck. You get access to the best cards in the format, which are Christia Honest and Herald of War's Light. I could go on for days. Six Samurai, James. Has your opinion changed on
Um,
this since the
I
last
would
tier
put
list?
Six Samurai in sus tier. I
Sus
think it's
tier?
maybe a little better than I give it credit for because it's a really annoying deck, kind of sacky, but it could maybe drop down to consider deleting, depending on how it is relative to the other things. But for now, I'm content to put it there. It
I
can really
think
get you good with United and Gateway.
I think it is a solid sus tier deck, probably like a high sus tier, maybe low meh tier. But this deck, its good draws are so fucking ridiculous. Like when you open double gateway and you have monster into grandmaster, that's crazy. It really just falls apart when you have the hands where it's like Yaichi and your deck just kind of doesn't really get anything going. Double Starlight Road. So um, Blackwings. This deck won Edison Legends. Obviously, it was the most represented deck at Edison Legends. Didn't really. I think there was two copies in top 16, right, James?
Two copies, but I'm definitely down to put it in top
Based.
base tier. Like
Honestly,
it's just a
it's an
good
insane
deck.
deck.
It's like however you end up playing it, whether it's with the chaos stuff or not, like it's just always going to be solid. It's pretty easy to pick up and play to a pretty competent level, but whether you're playing it at a good or bad level, it's just like a solid deck. It's not really going to do you wrong.
Yeah, and for those of you worried about the ordering in this, We may do a little bit of order shuffling once everything's in there, but in general, if it's in a certain tier, that's because its matchup spreads are better than the tier below it, and not because there's not going to be as much like specification on the ordering. Codaris, I think, is either bottom sus or considered leading. If we're being serious, I
If
think
we're being serious. If we're not being
I
serious,
I think Deep Sea Diva is an insanely strong card. I think Salvage is an insanely strong card, but I just think that you lack special summons, and in a format where you need the speed to be able to compete with decks like Blackwings or fucking X Saber or Gladiator Beasts, and you need to be able to play multiple plays into something that interrupts you. Codaris just has one play a turn ultimately, and that play's a good play. It's a strong play, but one play a turn just isn't enough to cut it in this format. What do you think, James?
yeah, you just kind of need more oomph. You need more power.
Yeah, if you can figure out a way to add special summons to this deck, then it's probably a lot better because Codaris is a strong card, but as it is right now, playing Codaris, considered leading. Quick draw Dandelion variants. What do you think, James?
I I would probably put them in with the second tier potentially based, and I would say they're probably going to be on the lower end of that. But I do believe that around that area is, this might change once we fill it out a little bit. But for now, I would put it there.
I personally really like control decks, and my opinion on the Dandelion deck has changed since the last tier list. But I do think it's on the slower end of things. Similar to Codaris, if you don't have a quick draw dandy draw, you're you're really reliant on your normal summon, and not only that, but your offense normal setting. So your deck's very passive. It doesn't apply a lot of pressure without the right cards, so I can totally see that. James, you've been playing a lot of X Saber. What do you think of this one?
Um, I would put it in mid or meh or whatever that is. Um, and I'm gonna have to imagine that it's gonna be near the very top of that. I mean, I guess again, we'll figure it out. But I've really been pleasantly surprised with the X Saber deck because when I started using it, it was really like, let's make this like deck I thought was really not very good, like halfway decent. But I've really found that it can compete with like, most other very strong decks in the format. I still feel like I haven't broken through that final, whether it's a list or play or just, maybe that's the limitation of the deck, but to really make it like be able to consistently go up against Fairy or Vayu or even the plant deck, which it does have a good matchup against, but I would have a hard time saying it's the better deck. So I think putting it here is where I would end up with it.
Yeah, I would honestly put it lower than you would. I obviously haven't played it as much as you have, but the few times I've played against it, it's felt like a very anemic, non-threatening deck. Yeah, when they have those insane like cold wave draws, I mean, it looks like a god deck, but when they don't have that, it's kind of like a Legend of Blue Eyes starter kit. Like it doesn't really come together for me personally, but I think it's a solid meh tier for sure. Um, Gladiator Beast is going to be kind of a hard one to rank because the matchups that Gladiator Beast wins, it fucking wins.
I mean, I would definitely put it potentially based. I would put it a little bit, I think, above Quick Draw Plant, but that's a pretty close distinction. But yeah, I mean, there are a lot of different builds of Glads. Geist top with a cool one, even if you're playing really something anti-meta like Deep Fissure Glads, like there are a lot of different options, and I think it's just always going to be a solid engine. So, and something that in any tournament or field, if people aren't very prepared in the side deck, it can really run away with games. So I think it's just a strong deck.
Yeah, I my opinion of this deck changed a lot over the last few weeks, mostly from watching Geist play with this deck. He really he enlightened me, James. He showed me the
That's good.
the fucking truth. All right? I would consider putting it in based except for it has a really bad matchup against probably every deck we're going to put in based. So,
Yeah.
I think that's the only thing keeping Glads down is like it beats up on anything worse than it, but it kind of gets beat up by anything better than it. So,
Well,
uh,
also any combo decks, like if more people start playing like these deep draw Dragon Turbo or like Kuraz combo type decks, like Glads is, I think, a phenomenal matchup against these decks.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have a lot of relevant interaction in War Chariot, and you get to play like basically whatever you want. And then if anything gets on the field that like floodgatey kind of stuff, you can just Geyseris pew pew. You know,
Totally.
Machina Gadgets, Machina Gadgets.
This is a tough one because, I mean, I definitely would just put them in mid, and maybe we don't have to um, split hairs about the difference. But I don't know if I actually think Machine Gadget are better than X Saber or not. For now, I guess I'll put them as better.
Honestly, I think they're potentially based. I think it's like one of the better decks that's like underexplored, especially like
Nah, not the way I see this tier. Like the way I see this tier list coming together, I think they're going to be more in line with the mid tier decks.
here's my reasoning. Here's my reasoning, James. And I'll go back. Maybe we'll come back to Machina, but I have some reasoning behind it. And once we get more of the tier list down, I'm gonna talk about my reasoning on Machina. So we'll come back to that. We'll come back to that.
All right.
Dragons clearly based.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. Like after playing it this weekend, if you want my honest opinion, I think that dragons could just be the very top of the tier below it. Like I'm not really prepared to say that dragons are every bit as good a deck as Blackwing, even though they have a phenomenal matchup against Blackwing. Um, Fairy and Vayu and Fish, which I'm imagining are going to be that top tier. So it's like I don't know. I don't really, but maybe that's just like
That's just
everyone
cap,
who
dude.
plays
That's
their
just cap. Honestly, I think dragons is
everyone who
just
plays their own deck is like whatever about it. So
yeah. No, I actually think dragons is just insane. Future Fusion is an auto win card. Very few decks have an auto win card that they can play on turn one. Dragons and Blackwing are two of the few decks that have something to that um, narrative. I think there's a lot of different ways we can build dragons. We saw the Turbo Dragons deck in Edison Legends have an insane run and do really well. And I think that the ceiling for dragons can be pushed even further than it is now. Like I feel like we haven't even fully optimized it, which is insane, considering how good of a performance it did. And another thing to consider too is that in every one of the little events, like the local events, Dragons placed in second place or first place in all of them, pretty much, except for I think the one I won with fairies. I don't think Dragon placed in that one, but it basically has consistent tournament results in the FL stuff. So I can't put it lower than based personally.
okay,
Rekindling. This is a deck that you faced in Edison Legends, isn't it, James?
yeah, I think it's in mid. I mean, it's basically just like a Rhypopaeus deck with a kill combo card. But that's good. I mean, Rekindling is an insane card.
Yeah, Rekindling is a really really good card. Do you think it's better or worse than X Saber?
If you're asking me, I would say worse, but
I'm cool with
they're
putting it
probably about the
worse.
same.
Yeah, I'm cool with putting it worse because I think when X Saber does its broken thing, it is better than when Rekindling does its broken thing. So I think X Saber's a
Yeah,
little bit better. Fish zero zero results at Edison Legends, which is kind of surprising, but I still think it's one of the best decks.
I think it. I mean, if you're asking me, I think it's like the best deck because it's just like when I play the matches with this deck, it just doesn't feel close at all. I've dropped matchups at points, but a lot of those are either due to pilot error or just really unfortunate circumstances. It's not by no means an unbeatable deck, but I just feel like when I'm playing it and if I'm playing correctly, I have all the tools. I feel like I think about a lot of these things as in terms of like tools to adapt to situations, especially because the field is so wide. And that's one reason that I wasn't so hot on dragons at the end of the day because sometimes you're really trying to only go on one game plan, and that is good enough to get there a lot of times. But fish can just kind of do it all.
Yeah, yeah, the adaptability is something that I also highly, highly value, and that's why I think Blackwings and Fairy are some of the best decks as well. I think Dragons is the least like you as a dragon player, if your opponent sets a Spirit Reaper or activates Brain Control at the right time, I mean, the things you lose to, you just lose to. There's no, like, you can't really adapt to things. But with the Fish deck, the Fairy deck, and the Blackwing deck, these top three sort of decks, you can adapt to like just about anything your opponent's doing, and you can do it in real time. Like you don't need to sideboard certain stuff for it. You can just shift the way you're playing the cards in your hand, and you can have a totally different game. So I completely agree with you. I think that's why Fish is one of the most powerful decks because it's a combo deck, but you can do what you said. You can do what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I think now let's just keep going. I'll come back to Machina in a bit. What do you think about value right now, James?
I mean, I still think I would have a hard time personally ranking value below Blackwing. Like, I know that is not a commonly held opinion, the way that the representation of the format plays out. But I mean, a bunch of the straight net deck value decks did top this tournament. So I really do think value is top tier, man. It's a very consistent version of the Raikou Kaius deck, but you also get to play Dad. You also get to play all these other broken cards like Oppression. And I just think that it's got to be top tier. I don't see any world in which it isn't.
I'm gonna have to agree with you, man. I like every time I play against the value deck, they have the most number of really, really busted limited cards that just immediately win the game. They also have the most consistent removal in Raikou Kaius. So, um, and it's the best Raikou Kaius deck because milling one value off of a Raikou, it kind of turns your mills into like plus 1.5s, right? Like if you flip a Raikou and you destroy a card, it's plus one. But if you mill a value, it's like plus 1.5 kind of.
Yeah.
So it's the only deck that's kind of gaining advantage to that degree with its mills besides like maybe Lightsworn, which we'll come to next. But um, also you're like, it's very hard to draw poorly with this deck because Sirocco is just a good card. Like the cards you want to mill are also good cards to draw. So yeah,
Totally.
I think it's a great deck. Fantastic. Still fantastic. Lightsworn. We didn't see hardly any of this in the tournament, did we?
Yeah, it's super underperformed. And I mean, like, given those results, I would be almost tempted to put it in sus. But when you look at the quality of the cards, I think it's hard to put it below mid. But I don't know. This is when we get into questions. Is Lightsworn better than Rekindling deck? I don't know. It's about the same, probably, in my
I
head.
I think that the Lightsworn deck is potentially based. I still think it's a disgusting
I think
deck.
it's super good, but I've really almost never seen it piloted really, really well in months of playing this format. So
True.
I have a hard time putting it that high.
True. See, we haven't seen it happen. There's been one major event. It could, and the reason I'm putting it in potentially based is because I do actually believe personally that it has the potential to do what it needs to do. I think Lightsworn, while it does suffer from those draws where you just draw wolves, right, and can't do anything, it also has kind of the same ability that these top four decks, not counting dragons, but these top four decks, they can adapt to a lot of situations. I feel like a strong Lightsworn player can adapt to a lot of situations, and I think that's very high value. So I don't know. And of course, Cold Wave JD is just. Do we even need to say? Do you want to put it in mad just because it doesn't have the results, or do you want to put it in potentially base, James?
I feel better about putting it in Meb, but I don't. I agree in theory that it could be potentially bit. Like it could be up there, but I would feel more comfortable putting it at the top there.
Yeah, let's leave it here for now until it has some results. Then it could maybe shift up or down. Rescue Cat Synchro. We didn't see any of
We,
this.
we didn't see a lot of it, but I mean, I think that this is one of those decks we memed upon. I think it's a sus deck. I don't think it's a particularly good deck, but it can win. I mean, sure, sure. Of course, the deck that has like Cold Wave Monk or these types of combos, of course that deck can win. Like, don't be stupid. Like it's okay, and it's versatile. It has Raikou removal. It can deal with a lot of stuff, so it's okay.
Yeah. I think we've played a couple videos on this channel. Of course, if you haven't watched them, go check them out. With different rescue cat variants recently, and I'm warming up to the deck a little bit. It isn't the best, for sure, but I think there's some untapped potential here and there. There could be some tech cards that make it a little stronger than it was in the original tier list we had.
Mhm.
This hero beat deck, this Gemini hero beat deck, there was actually a fair amount of it in the tournament, but it did not do so hot. And
Yeah, I would probably say it's worse than Cat, but kind of around there.
I think it's like the top of consider deleting. Um, I I
I'm giving it a little more credit than that.
You think it's
I
a
would
little
give
bit
it.
better? Okay, we'll put it in sus. We'll put it in sus. I think the issue with this deck is you don't have the Shining, you don't have Pot of Duality, and you don't have Solemn Warning, so you're quite underpowered. Um,
Totally.
and that's really the biggest issues. Zombies, we didn't see any zombies, uh,
Yeah,
at
I
all.
kind of think that zombies are probably better than their representation would let on, but at the same time would probably still put them in consider deleting.
Uh, I think zombies are better than cat. But I'll put
Yeah,
them.
I don't.
I'll put
I
them
definitely
here.
don't.
I'll put them here. Let's not split hairs. I don't think they
You
are.
don't want people to delete zombies?
I don't think people should delete zombies just yet. I think people should honestly
Give it another week.
give it another go, because like there there's something to be said about how Book of Life and like Creature Swap, those two cards like match up against these top tier decks. So in the right field, zombies could do some shit, dude. Zombies could really do some shit. But I think these like middle tier decks, like these Glads and Quick Draw decks, they beat up on zombies so hard that you kind of have to face like all base decks or like all other shit tier decks for zombies to really have
Yeah.
a run. But don't delete it just yet. Don't delete it. Give it a little bit more. Gravekeepers, dude. Gravekeepers.
I think gravekeepers are the top of sus.
Dude, what?
Yeah, that's that's where I would put them, honestly. We're
That's
trying to be honest here.
that's very, very harsh. I think you, the Gravekeeper guru, the one who knows this deck, didn't you say you considered playing it for Edison Legends and you'd put it this low?
It's facts. Yeah, but at the end of the day, it just doesn't have the tools, and it's like any stun deck that if they put a big monster on the board and you don't have the 1-for-1 rule to deal with it, then you're just gonna get run over. It's good though. I like it, and it could be better, but I don't think it's as good as Rekindling or X Saber or Judgment Dragon.
I think this is a fucking psyop. I think they're potentially based, but you know what? We'll go with it. You play the deck a lot. You're the Gravekeeper guru. You
Facts.
know. Hard stun. I think hard stun is also sus. I think it's exactly where Gravekeepers is. So wherever you choose to put Gravekeepers, we're gonna put hard stun.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
I
that's right
have
there.
I have a huge bias for this deck. I love stun decks. I love these types of decks. Um, but
Yeah, I would put it right there.
yeah.
Regardless of the Gravekeeper thing, I would put it around there.
I mean, these two decks are just so much better than these four. That's my biggest issue with this tier is like these could be like the bottom of meh. But we'll come back to that. We'll
We'll
come
just
back to
fill
that.
it up.
Yeah, we'll fill it out. Black Garden.
I would put it like solidly in the middle of sus. I really would like it for it to be good, but I haven't really found the build just feels smooth enough and feels consistent enough. Because, but I think it. I don't know. I kind of think it really could move up in a way that I wouldn't give these other decks credit to. But
We'll put it here on the account that it has potential. We'll put it slightly below
yeah,
Gravekeepers. I think it does have a lot of potential. I think one of the top four players from the last tournament, MWN Hydro Pump, he has a very cool like tribal plants Black Garden deck, and I think that deck's pretty legit. So I'm excited to
yeah,
see where it
we're talking
goes.
about there's different builds floating around with like volcanics or just plants or even some that are like Dequechi Donzalug type stuff. But yeah, just anything abusing Black Garden is pretty interesting.
Uh, I'm gonna say this up front. I think Empty Jar is like one of the fucking scariest decks. I never want to play against this deck. It's so terrifying. um, in this
And because of
format.
that, consider deleting.
Yeah, don't.
Delete it.
If you have this deck in your
I
builder,
also, it is a scary deck. Of course, it's a scary deck, but I don't think it's a very good deck. I'm gonna be honest with you.
I don't know, man. That's a threat. That's a threat and a half. I think Bushi's fucking good. I think it's like meh. It's better than
No,
Stun, dude. It's better than. It's
no,
really really good. I think
it's
you're underrating Bushi if you don't think it's at least bottom meh, bro.
Gravekeeper is better than Bushi.
Then Gravekeepers should be in meh tier, dude. I think you're just underrating. We could put Bushi here and Gravekeepers here.
Okay, sure.
I think that that's like this looks more accurate to me. I don't know. Anyway, Diva Frogs. This is the Roanoke special, and it had a huge showing in the tournament.
Yeah, and Roanoke is currently on the top of the ladder. I mean, that's definitely in potentially based for me. It could even be in very top, but just kind of my personal taste. I don't think it's quite as good as those decks, but it certainly has the results to prove it if you're looking at it purely in that way. Although even though most of those results are by literally one person. So
Yes, I think that Roanoke has put in a ton of work to this, and this is something I do want to mention at least once in this video. Something that matters almost more than your deck choice is your familiarity with your deck. If you are aware with a lot of situations, and you'll notice this with the people who consistently win tournaments, they're the ones who are the most familiar with their decks. The Edison Legends was won by Topher702, a huge Blackwing fan, and he's been playing that deck for 10 years basically. So and Roanoke, he's number one on the ladder right now. He's number one with his Diva Frog deck that's like the only deck he plays. So I think where was I going with this, James? Fill in the blanks for me, bro. Fill in the blanks.
you're saying that the familiarity matters a lot more than like some raw matchup based thing. But as far as where we were going to put it, um, yeah, I mean, I still think potentially based is a good place for it. I think it's better than Glad's.
Yeah, for sure. I think the only thing that's not putting it in base for me is that it is just kind of strictly worse fish, but that's a discussion for another video. Um, dude, the Absolute Zero deck, this breakout deck from Edison Legends. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Um, I think it's cool, and there are a couple of different builds, so maybe it'll be shaken out a little bit, which is actually the best, whether it's with Sarkos or with higher monster count or just triple Caius like Silch's had. But I think that overall I would put it a little worse than Lightsworn.
Interesting. I think that there's a few reasons I want to put it potentially based. Number one is the performance. 3 copies in top 16 of a deck that wasn't even on our radar. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. And the second reason is a really powerful player, Dale Bolito. He played in this event, right? And he messaged us. He asked us for deck lists, and we sent him deck lists. But he ended up choosing Absolute Zero. So like, I wonder why he chose that deck over the other ones. It's like interesting to think that like a powerful player asks you for a deck list, and then they end up choosing a deck, and you're like, they must have chose that deck for a reason. So, but I don't know. You think it's better than Lightsworn or worse than Lightsworn? Did you say?
I said worse, but upon revising, I mean, because of what I said, just because the results, like Lightsworn had no results, this had pretty spectacular results. I would probably put it. No, still in the tier below.
Ah, shit. Okay. Fuck. All right. Does that look good?
But
That look
yeah,
good?
I would put it there. Yes.
Um, yeah, I personally probably put it higher, but for the sake of the vid, for the sake of the pretty little graph. All right. Now I think we're in a spot where I can talk about Machina Gadgets. I think because we're getting towards the tail end. I think Machina Gadgets. The reason I want to put them in potentially based is if you look at the matchup spread, I think Machina Gadget has a very good matchup against the top 5 decks, and I think it also has a really good matchup against Glads. So
Um, I don't know about that. I mean, I think it has an okay matchup against a lot of those decks in some like probably a better matchup spread against them than a lot of other decks do, but I don't think it has a positive matchup against a lot of them either. I still think I would probably put it above Absolute Zero. I don't know. I'd put it at the top of there, somewhere around that.
yeah, yeah, that sounds about right.
You sound so disappointed.
I don't know.
Sorry, that's
I
not
just
that's
think
not that good.
I think there's a lot of exploring to do with Machina. Like
Totally.
we have a video with Machina no
Well, this is
gadgets.
the one time. This is the one time you're gonna catch me being somewhat like decisive, but that's because I'm making a fucking tier list. In real life, if you ask me, should I play Machine Gadget? What is the best Machine Gadget? I would be like, hell yeah, go play Machine Gadget. It's a sick deck. You could totally win a tournament with Machine Gadget. So I'm not counting them out, but like if I'm being critical and I'm ranking these things, that's where I would put Machine Gadget for sure.
Yeah, I think if it was just the Machina Future Fusion deck, or like there's like other variants where it's like Machina Skill Drain with Fusilier Dragon and some other stuff that you can play. I think, man, I just think it's so potential. Like I think this deck has just so much potential, and I think it does fairly well against the field. But we'll leave it there. We'll leave it
Believe it when
there.
I see it.
Yeah, believe it when we see it. Believe it when we see it. Volcanic variants. We've
Okay, so yeah, we were including like volcanic plant, like plant with volcanic shells, in that same dandelion category. So this is, I guess, talking more about like volcanic control stuff with like Rykos and hamsters. There was a user Jikes that did pretty well at one of the tournaments before, and I would kind of put that around the same level as this rekindling deck, I think, or maybe a little below Gravekeepers. I mean, somewhere around there. I think the only reason I lump it in with rekindling is because it's like both end up kind of being like Ryko spy flip based control decks. So
Yeah, I think it's a little better than Rekindling. I like Volcanic Rocket as a card. I like how with Flamvell Fire Dog you really have to work to get your +1, whereas with Volcanic Rocket you don't have to work that hard. You just summon it, and that's nice. And I also think Blaze Accelerator is a fucking stupid card, but again,
sure.
it ultimately boils down to the engine, the Rykos, the spies, the Kaises, and it's just very similar. It's all player preference. One of the breakout decks, one of the really really sick decks from the early rounds of the tournament, Chaos Warriors from
Yeah, table 500 deck.
I mean, I think it's sus. I think it's sus. I think it's all right. Like,
I, hey, I like playing Chaos Warrior and go format as much as anyone. So I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt.
I
Don't delete it because you might need to use it when you play Go format.
you might need to use it against your opponent who only plays Glads. You beat up on them.
Yeah.
No, like all things considered, I think Breaker is a strong card. I think DD Warrior Lady's like you said earlier. I think it's like strangely one of the best cards in the metagame. And you play 3 of those in this deck, and those are all just like they're fantastic cards. And when they go off, it's really hard
Go
to,
off.
you know,
Go off, Kings.
deal with that. Frog Monarchs.
Frog Monarchs. I would put probably like right above Lightsworn, I think. Or
That's really high. It did all right at the
they
tournament.
did pretty well, dude. And you just kind of can't, right? Like I think it goes Diva Frogs is just a worse version of Fish, and
Yeah.
Frog Monarchs is just a worse version of that. But
Yeah.
that's still pretty good. Still pretty damn good.
Yeah, still if you're playing the worst version of a better deck, it's still all right, You still got the right idea. It's
Better
just
idea, yeah.
missing the proactive diva and the proactive kill your opponent combo coelacanth thing. For the rest of these decks, I think Uriah's, somewhere in here, wherever. But
Just put it wherever.
yeah, just put it wherever.
Gigaplant was over here do one.
Oh, Gigaplant. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
No, Uriah actually is good. I mean, I do think Uriah is good, but I think it's like another stun deck. I think it's like in there.
Yeah. I mean, like Uriah is really good, and then you play against Glads, and then you're just like, fuck, and you just die.
I would rather play Uriah than play Cat. I think it's a better deck than Cat.
No cap. That's so sad, dude. I honestly I could
I would
not.
probably rather play Uriah than Bushi, but that's me.
Fuck it, dude. Top of sus. Fuck it.
That's an experimental ranking. Okay. What were you? I know you're about to talk about these last.
I know. I was gonna say
decks that confuse the users.
So like in the sus tier, like you were talking about, like in real life, if someone asks me should I be playing this deck, I look at the sus tier, right? And I'm saying like I would never recommend someone play the cat deck. I would never recommend someone play the Gemini beat deck. But all these other decks, there are situations where I'd be like, yeah, try it out.
I like Gemini Beat. I like decks like that. I don't know. The only thing that I think is the versions that I use often do try to use Absolute Zero in some way. So maybe in that sense, they're just like worse versions of other Absolute Zero variants. But I do think there's like a decent Gemini Beat or Hero deck out there. You know,
Yeah,
they're
and
in that range.
I just could never, if someone sent me their deck and they'd be like, hey, what do you think of my deck? I would just tell them to pick a different deck if they sent me one of those two. So that's why I'm gonna put them at the bottom here. Anyway, this is more or less it. I mean, these other decks are just kind of like fucking meme decks that we had in the first tier list. I think the only one in here that like we haven't really even tried or explored is the Secret Village deck, but
Could be very good.
it could be about as good as maybe Necro Valley if we're being real. Magician's Circle type beat. But this is about.
I think that if we really wanted to, and not to confuse the users even more, but if you added another tier between meh and sus, and you cut it off at like putting X Saber at the top of that one and putting like stun at the bottom of it, I feel like that might be accurate in a way that, you know what I'm saying?
Experimental. Okay, so what are we doing?
Experimental.
We're moving this down, this down, this down, this down, and then we're doing this up through stun, you said?
Something like that. Like, this is probably actually more true to how I would think about it.
Yeah, hold on. I got to change the color, though. The color is a little bit, let's do pink. It's kind of experimental. Yeah, this is more accurate. I think this is more accurate. I would honestly put Secret Village probably here in theory. Like
experimental.
Assuming it performs about as well as your average stun deck, I would put it there in theory. Now, if you guys have any questions about this or if you have any disagreements, leave them in the comments. We love to hear you guys' thoughts on this stuff.
Yeah, only the comments. Don't message me. Don't tell me about your pet deck. I don't care.
You can message me. Don't message James. He's not very personable. He's kind of an asshole. He's kind of a fucking douchebag. Just kidding. Just kidding. James is like, have you ever watched, The Grinch? Like, James is in the stages where his heart hasn't, burst out of his chest and killed him.
3 sizes are too small, bitch.
Exactly. So, but leave some love. Leave some love in the likes and the comments, and drop your opinions below. We love to hear that shit. Join the Discord. Link for that in the description. Peace.